right away. And we're live tonight. It is December the 25th of February 2023. Actually, I was supposed to do the one on Friday, but because I was pressed by time, I didn't have the opportunity to do that. So I'm doing chapter 10 and 11, the first part, today on Sunday, and tomorrow then I will go and do the part 2 of chapter 11, and hopefully get into chapter 12. Chapter 10 and 11a are put together because this part of the Bible is it talks about the same story. They are related, and it's better to consider them together rather than taking them apart, because then you miss the point exactly of what an Afrocentric take of this part of the Bible would be. And I think it's one of the most important Bible passages that gives us a glimpse of who we are, or who we used to be as people of African descent, right? Now, remember that in the first part, when we consider chapter 9, we talked about the descendants, or Noah, how the deluge went, and he had three sons. Ham was the last one, and Ham was able to see the father's nakedness and laugh at it, which earned him the curse to be a slave to his two brothers, or their descendant to be slaves to the descendant of his two brothers. And we related that to the history, I'll say, the modern history of Black people around the world, where the history of being slave is not to be disputed. Of course, slavery existed um, for a long time amongst people, but nowhere would you see an entire group of people being removed and build infrastructure and whole country on behalf of their masters. They will do it to a certain degree, but it has never been done to the level to which people of African descent have been treated in slavery. So this passage is very important. Now, when we take the fact that uh, chapter 10 talks about Ham being the forefather of Black people, I suggest that we should not shy away from that, but try to see how we can understand ourselves better, and how this makes sense in the totality of the scriptures. So in chapter 10, it talks about the descendants of now Shem, Japheth, and Ham, and it goes right to Ham. In verse 6, it says, "And the sons of Ham were Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan." Now, let's square into Cush. You know that in Africa, there is a part that was called Cush, and we have the Cushite in, in Africa. That was Sudan. Initially, it was the whole Sudan. Then you had it was split into North Sudan and South Sudan when they were not able to take the whole Sudan. Now it is two, and these southerner are believed to be the descendants of that great kingdom of Cushites. And the fact is that in ancient Egypt, before it was European invaded, the Cushite had a very long dynasty. In fact, there are a landmass that has more pyramids in the Kushite, in Kush, than in Egypt itself. Most people don't know that. And if you can zero in into the fact that Cush is descendant directly from Ham, this is where, hypothetically, and we can take that for it at the moment, where people of African descent come from. Where it gets interesting is the fact that, and Cush, on verse 8, it says that, and Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. In other version of the Bible, they say Nimrod was a mighty warrior in opposition to the Lord. He was against what the Lord was doing. Don't forget that his forefathers were already cursed by the Lord to be slaves. But despite all that, Cush or Nimrod was a mighty warrior, descendant of the Cushites, who were able to build a city, the city or the Tower of Babel. You can see now that when um, we were able to figure out where we stood, we could come together and build great things. Now, that's Nimrod. And we can say from this that Nimrod, we are the descendant of Nimrod. We are meant to be a mighty people, a mighty warrior. Unfortunately, the situation is not the case as it is, right? Now, what happened to the Tower of Babel is something that goes now into chapter 11. And in chapter 11, they and and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. We already know that Nimrod is the one that initiated the construction of the Tower of Babel. It's a whole city. And on verse 6, chapter 11, it says, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this is they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they had imagined to do. Whatever man, as descendant of the Cushite or of Ham, would put their mind to do, they were able to do that on the only condition, under the only condition that they will be one, they will be united, right? But that did not please the Lord at that part. And in verse 7, it says, let us go down, let us go down. Now he's talking to other deities. Remember in the beginning we talked about the possibility that it's not just one God. This entity is communicating with other entities about human affairs. It says, let go down and there confound their language, and that they may not understand one another's speech. And we will not talk language in terms of just the word as we are speaking, that kind of language. Our forefathers were able to develop the technology that will allow them to communicate as a single mind. We had a collective identity, a collective language that allowed our forefathers to build a great city, to build something that was on par, if not threatening, the deities that were known at that time. This is powerful because we can see that, and this is where I plug in the Afrocentric way of looking at things. We can just now, in light of these few words, we can see that we as people of African descent, we have the capacity within ourselves to build great things. But we can only do that as long as we are united, we are one. And it gives us an idea that there is an entity or entities, because there are multiple at this point, who are not pleased by that. And today there are many reasons to believe that the divide in between the people of African descent was manufactured by entities that did not want us to be united. There are evidence, and if you look at these, I personally believe that the construction of the, uh, um, I would say the Göbekli Tepe discovery was a an assimilation to that, because where there you see the images from different parts of the world finding the root there in one spot. And this is where this site is, like, it's way old. It goes like 11,600 years back, which is actually a testament to the fact that other places, these megalithic um, edifices were already constructed, and they came together to build one. They were able to have the communication technology that were threatening to the deities of that time. Now, this is the third or fourth time that we see that the intent, or the intervention of the deities into human affairs are not necessarily to our advantage. The first one we saw in the Garden of Eden, where there was prohibition to access the tree of life, because then we would be equal to the gods. If we can do that, that was a no. Took that away. There was another time where the sons of God went and rigged the game, came, took women on from the earth to make them wives, and violence was spread around the world. But then God chose to destroy man along with the sons of man, of God, that came from the heaven to take wives here. And the third time, and there was a deluge, of course. And the third time we see here that it is not necessarily something that you do wrong, right? It is also something that you do right. And what was done right by Nimrod was to unify the human race, not at that time, and be able to build a an edifice that was comparable, or if not superior, to what the gods or the deities at that time were able to put together. Which means that, and we can see it, in front of our eyes. We in Africa, we have everything. We have um, the human and the natural resources to be greater than any technology that we see around being praised, being, right now it's AI, and it used to be internet and all that kind of thing. And you see all these technologies when they pop up, it's not that they unite people, they distract people more than unite people. It is great medium. I wouldn't have been able to communicate or safeguard the thoughts that I have if this medium was not available. So you take the good and the bad, right? But it does not prevent us from appreciating the fact that we are being held back intentionally. And it gives us a definition of God, of the devil as well, right? Because the devil is, we saw, is an entity that comes and takes what is rightfully yours, being your land, or being your women, which is your future selves, propagated throughout the future, throughout millennia and eternity. But when they take that away from you, then it is as if that you do not live forever any longer. And in this case, we can see clearly that um, something else is happening. The devil is also the entity or the power to divide people in order to conquer them. You can see this saying has been around for millennia, for a long time: divide and conquer. And that is what has been done by the deities. We can actually say that the deities of this world that are making sure that Africa does not come together are very powerful and successful at doing so. And these are the glimpse of warning that our forefathers put in writings so that we can understand where we are in relation to what is happening in the world, what is happening into our continent. We have been divided really, really from the beginning, where they took people. Some of the strongest genetic material in Africa were shipped across the Atlantic and they were living there. Whether there were other black people there already is another subject on its own, but this is an attempt to divide us. Once these troublemakers, so to speak, quote unquote, were removed from the land, they had less power to influence or to get away from the bondage that the deities of that period of time had put together. And it was not sufficient, because you can see even in these islands, in Haiti, in Jamaica, in Brazil, there were revolutions to break out of slavery, but that was denied because the mechanism was to make sure that we remain divided. We do not speak the same language. What is that language? That's the big question. What is that language that is capable of making us work together and be able to build something that is very, very powerful to threaten the gods? I propose that that uh, language is not a technological prowess that we see today, being able to communicate and so forth. I believe that it is a spiritual uh, thing rather than a merely uh, language or words that will will be able to bring us together. And I think our journey throughout this world is to find out or to remember that language through our own way of living, with our own spirituality. We may be able to attain that. And it sounds very, I'll say, new agey or things of that nature. A little thirsty. New agey, but I believe that there is a way, whether it is a technological prowess that we will have to perform, we are capable of that because we have the knowledge, and the knowledge is within us. The knowledge is in our continent. So I found this passage of Genesis chapter 11, that was 10, 11a, very interesting and something to keep in mind as we are going through this exploration, to know that our descendant, we do not have anything to be ashamed, being the generation of the descendant that were cursed to be slaves to the two brothers of Ham. Because our ancestors were able to break that curse and build something great. And we are very capable of breaking the chokes and the chains that shackles us right now, preventing us from working together in order to build great things, in order to make sure that our lands and our future is secure. So that's what I have for today. And it's shorter because it's shorter too. The chapter is short, sweet, but very, very interesting. Tomorrow, we'll be going through Genesis chapter 11, the second part, which is a different story. It starts with the story of the descendant of, I'll say, Abraham, and moving forward. So it was very important to break them down like this so that we can make sense of our forefather, our being descendant of Ham, possibly, but certainly being part of what is described as Cush, or the descendant of Cush, in the Holy Writing. So that's what I have. I have the link to our next racial wealth gap series. It is going to be on March 9. So the link is below. Please register, and I will see you then. Until then,